we all have so many questions about this, and this is the kind of gathering where we hope, no one is shy to say, wait a minute, I didn't understand what you just said. Can you say that again? Or can you explain that a different way? That's what we're really here for. So thank you very much for coming. Some housekeeping. There is food and coffee, as you know. Please stand up anytime if you want to refresh yourself or just take a break from all the information that's coming in. Also, while they'll be presenting one by one, first Gino and then Yukiko, and then we'll be joined from Singapore as well. If you have any questions at any point, just raise your hand. We don't want the conversation and the description to go so far that maiiwan na kayo, or tayo, rather. So stop them, and they'll be happy to be stopped. When that's all over, we'll still have time for a few more questions, if there still are. But please use the presentations, Gino and Yukiko, to just ask them questions already at that point. So let me at this point introduce our presenters and discussants today. First will be Gino, Dizon. The three of them are all partners at Bain & Company. Gino is a member of the Consumer Products Retail and Acquisitions practice. He has over 20 years experience and has worked in multiple companies and countries in ASEAN, the US, and Europe. Also with us today is Yukiko Tsukamoto. Hi, Yukiko. There. Also a partner, but she's a member of Bain's Financial Services and Consumer Products practice. She also co-leads the sustainability practice out of Tokyo. And then we're going to be joined by their colleague from Singapore, Mohan Jayaraman, is similarly a partner, and he's a member of Bain's Advanced Analytics practice. So while AI may be relatively new to most of us, 6 months old for most of us, he's been working in analytics and AI for about 27 years. So he knows whereof he speaks today. I guess he's so steeped into that his passion really is, or one of his passions is training children to use AI. I don't know if after this session there will be a side session if you want to ask him how to get your children to use AI as well. Aside from that, also robotics and game building. I think that's a whole different course, and we'll tell you if we have a course on that coming up. With that, I'm going to turn over to Gino, who will start us off. Again, please feel free to raise your hand at any point. We'll try to keep us as informal as possible and hopefully as informative as possible. Gino.
Thank you, Coco, for the introduction, and thank you all for joining us this morning. It's a real pleasure to be able to talk to you about, I think, this very hot topic, as Coco mentioned. Maybe just a quick introduction for those of you who don't know Bain. Myself, Yukiko, and Mohan, who is joining us in a few seconds. We're all partners at Bain & Company. We're one of the leading global consulting firms. We set up our office in the Philippines middle of last year, so we're very new to the market physically. But we've been serving the market, we've been serving the Philippines and clients here for the last 25 years. So our first engagement here was about sometime in the mid-90s. But we'd always been serving it from Singapore and from Hong Kong. So we're really excited to be able to be in the market since the middle of last year. Welcome. So what we'd like to do today is talk to you about, is to provide you with a brief overview of generative AI. What we'd like to also do is show you a couple of demos to really bring this to life for you, and talk about some of the use cases that we're seeing across different industries and sectors. We'll do this hopefully in a very interactive way. We purposely asked Coco to try and keep the audience small, so hopefully this is a safe space for everybody to ask your questions. Please stop us along the way if there's anything that's not clear or that might be more interesting for you to double click on. But please, let's make this as interactive as possible. We have about 30 minutes or so of content that we want to show you, but we also wanted to save about 20 minutes at the end for any Q&A. So if you haven't asked it along the way, we hopefully will have time at the end for Q&A.
Like as Gino said, if you want to interrupt, please do.
Please do.
If Gino is engrossed there, raise your hand. I'll see you and I will AI him.
So we thought maybe the best place to start is showing you a very quick video. I'll introduce it and I'll talk more about it later. But we have a global partnership with OpenAI, which I'll talk more about later, and with the Coca-Cola company. They were one of our first partners and clients who signed on to look at this space. And so maybe better to show the video and let the video speak for itself. If we can just run the video.
I am imagined by artificial intelligence. Let me get straight to the point. Artificial intelligence scares people. Here's why.
You're probably asking yourself, am I prepared for this? Let's circle back to this point later. But here is a brand that was prepared to jump in head first. Introducing Create Real Magic. The Coca-Cola, Bain Company, OpenAI Alliance. We created the world's very first AI platform that combines text GPT-4 and generative images DALL-E 2 together. On March 20, 2023, 300 pieces of artificial intelligence designed artwork appeared on the iconic Piccadilly Circus and Times Square billboards to launch our new Create Real Magic platform. We invited the global community to create new art with AI and Coke's iconic assets. Marking the first time in history, the world's most valuable brand democratizes its brand assets and places the power of creation straight in the hands of its fans and AI. The Create Real Magic project is a runaway success, but it did make a lot of people nervous.
Maybe even you? At the heart of every great creative project is the ability to connect emotionally. This is the human touch, and this cannot be replicated by AI alone.
I'd like to buy the world a home and furnish it with love. Grow apple trees and honeybees and snow white turtle doves. I'd like to teach the world to sing. Sing with me. Perfect harmony. Perfect harmony. I'd like to buy the world a Coke and keep it company. That's the real thing. I'd like to teach the world to sing. In perfect harmony. Perfectly. And I'd like to buy the world a Coke and keep it.
Okay, so this was the Coke campaign that we ran earlier this year in March. I don't know, had anyone seen this before? So it wasn't open in the Philippines, the Create Real Magic site, but it was big in the US, big in Europe. We had record people coming onto the site, participating in the campaign. And it culminated in several hundred of these user-generated campaigns and pieces being put on Times Square and Piccadilly Circus. It is a real success for Coke. But this is really just the beginning. I think Coke, when Coke approached us and we started talking with Coke and the OpenAI folks, this was really about Coke wanting to invest and learn about this space and see what can be done. So this is really just the beginning. Maybe I'll start with maybe foundational definitions and an overview of generative AI. Some of you might be familiar with traditional AI, and let's talk about how generative AI might be different. So those of you that are familiar with traditional AI will recognize some of the terms. One, it's structured. So it works with very structured data sets. It solves problems, and it's often predictive. It uses machine learning patterns and algorithms to answer questions, to provide a predictive analysis. but it's really working with large quantitative and structured data sets. That's traditional AI. Now, when we go to generative AI, there are a couple of differences. Number one, it can work with unstructured data. It actually is so powerful that it can work with unstructured data. It focuses on developing new content. So it doesn't just answer questions. It actually develops new original content. It analyzes patterns. It analyzes structures in the data. It gets smarter as it goes to develop the new content. Okay, we can go to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. OpenAI is one of the leading companies in generative AI. So they were started in 2015. You might recognize some of the names. I think I was talking to one of you this morning. You know Sam Altman. You obviously know Elon Musk. OpenAI has one of the largest, most sophisticated AI models. And we'll talk about the 4 key parts to it in the next slide. They've grown steadily. So OpenAI now has ChatGPT, which is a key component of OpenAI, now has over 1 billion users. So it's getting to scale very, very, very quickly. And it's obviously impacting their valuation. And then let me just talk very quickly about the Bain OpenAI partnership. So really the partnership that we established with OpenAI, we are the lead enterprise consulting partner for OpenAI. And what does that mean? We work together with OpenAI to work with clients to really bring the highest value use cases to their businesses. So OpenAI contributes its breakthrough AI platform. We bring our strategy and execution and development experience, and we work with clients. So the first example of this really was the relationship that we established with Coke, a 3-way partnership between Coke, OpenAI, and Bain, to really look at use cases across the entire Coke value chain to drive generative AI. This is probably the only tech slide I will show today. We wanted to keep it very strategic in the discussion. I wanted to show you use cases, but this is probably the most tech-focused slide that we'll see today. There are 4 components of generative AI, and 4 components that OpenAI really features. Number 1, so if you want to remember the 4 components, it's text, image, voice, and code. So number 1 is text. So many of you, I think, raised your hand because you've tried ChatGPT and ChatGPT 4.0. So this is the main component of OpenAI. OpenAI is probably the leader in this space around text. An example of this is really, you go on ChatGPT and you say, can you write me an essay for my school if you were a student, or can you write me an email? I was talking to someone the other day, and they said I needed to stand in front of my children's class and say a Thanksgiving prayer. So I went on ChatGPT. I typed, Thanksgiving prayer for school children, and out came a prayer that the mother could lead.
Is it the right religion?
It was religious agnostic, she said. Yeah. So that's an example of text and the power of text. You might hear, some of you might have heard of the term DALL-E 2. This is about imaging. So it's about a generative model that can create realistic images from text. So those of you who might have tried it might go into ChatGPT or go into the system and say, make me the next sneaker that looks like, has purple and yellow if you're a Lakers fan, and outcomes imaging. Okay. The third component of OpenAI is speech. Okay, so this is a common use today is to codify meeting minutes, to codify interviews, to transcribe different conversations. So that's Whisper. And then the fourth component is Clip, which is a neural network that describes inputting images in text. So this is where it creates new content, and you basically have very unstructured instructions to say, describe what this photo looks like. Okay. Now the power of all of this is not each one. The power is actually when you start combining all of these things together. So when you say, text plus imaging plus voice, or imaging plus clip. So this is where the power starts to really provide breakthroughs when you start combining one or two or three or four of these OpenAI elements. Maybe I'll stop here. Any questions? Like I said, this is probably the most complex slide. We try to keep it very simple. This is the most complex slide. So if any questions, comments, input? Yes.
Take a combination of these four.
I'm sorry?
Deepfake. It's like you modify, you put someone else's face, and then that person is talking.
That's a different software.
It's different.
It's a different software. Yeah. That is more just imagery and voice match than, because what this generative AI is, that one is more like put, let's say, former President Obama's face and put his speech in a sort of a configured speech, and then you match it with his mouth. You are not really asking the AI to create anything. You're putting together different component, right? This one, what is very different now is that you ask, let's say, the prayer for the kids, or like, I need a Nike sneaker that marches LA Lakers. They create this. They mean OpenAI, or like generative AI creates this. So they're no longer asking human beings to put things together. Once you order them, they can actually create from scratch. Well, not scratch, a huge database that they have now stored. They can create it. They know what the Lakers color looks like from all the images that is now stored on the website, and they know what Nike sneaker look like, so they merge it together. So it is from that standpoint, it's very different, and that's why this hype, right? That's why this is so much hype around it, because this is so fundamentally different from what we used to.
Can I ask them a question?
Yes.
Could I ask if anyone has done imaging, either DALL-E or other software? Just two or three?
So DALL-E, yes.
Yes. Which one did you use?
Midjourney.
Has anyone tried Whisper, or do your EAs or secretaries know about Whisper? They're scared about their job now?
Maybe you don't know that they know.
Wait, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. How about the video analytics capability?
What do you mean by video analytics?
So the neutral network capability. So the clip. So OpenAI can describe
The video
video contents.
Let me maybe a good time to ask Mohan if he knows.
Yeah. So when maybe it's a good time to bring Mohan. Mohan, are you there?
Yep, very much. Can you hear me?
Did you hear the question?
No, I couldn't hear the question very well. I can just ask you to repeat it, please.
The question was, is there a solution in is there a solution that is offered by OpenAI that does a clip-like thing, so description for videos, not for static images?
Not yet. So if you notice in the diagram that we've called out, we've said there are more services that are coming up. So the current services are largely for static images, but it's likely as we go ahead that there will be APIs that they will put together for short video creation as well. You should see that coming up fairly shortly is our sense.
Just go back.
Any other question from the room?
So where I think the question we might be leading to is you might start to think about, where is OpenAI most useful? And we've laid out sort of four types of situations and characteristics where we think it's very useful. And you'll see different use cases later. So we'll talk about use cases later. But number one, manual repetitive tasks. Generative AI is, I think the risk and the opportunity, which is both, we're seeing at the moment is generative AI can really replace a lot of the human contributions to manual repetitive tasks because of its technology, because it has text and speech and video. We can use all of that. So repeatable manual steps, manual exercises can be replaced by, we're seeing more and more replacement opportunities with generative AI. The second thing I mentioned earlier, traditional AI is structured, generative AI unstructured. So the more unstructured the data, the more that the algorithms can work and really provide breakthrough results to identify patterns and behaviors. Third is, it provides a user-friendly interface to really extract insights. So it's very simple to use. The user interface is very, very simple. And then the last part is really generating new content. So you shouldn't think about generative AI as just simplifying tasks and taking away repeated exercises, but really it allows you to start using the tool to create new content. And the more you use it, the smarter it gets, the better it gets as you go. So this is a little bit of the overview, and we try to keep it simple. What we thought we would try to do now is actually show you how it works. I think it's best seen, not best explained. So can I invite Mohan? Mohan will take us through a couple of use cases that we've worked on with OpenAI. Mohan, are you there? Can we now move to the demos? You might just want to quickly introduce.
Sure, Gino. Firstly, great to be here, and thanks for all of your time. By way of quick introduction, my name is Mohan. I'm a partner in Bain based out of our Singapore office. My focus is on analytics and AI. I've actually been in the field for the last about 27 odd years. I spent the first about 17 years of my career running these teams in organizations around financial services, in banks, in insurance companies, etc. And over the last 10 years, I was working with a company called Experian, which is a data and analytics organization, if you've interacted with them, working with the industry across not just financial services, but also in retail, consumer products, and so on. My focus has also been on generative AI. So I've spent a lot of time in this space over the last about 5-6 years, even before it was so exciting. And I also lead, consequently, the set of initiatives that we're driving across APAC on generative AI at this point in time. Like I said, great to be here. I'm going to go through the demos. Feel free to stop me at any point and ask questions. Let me share my screen and hope that this works. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep, we can see you, Mohan.
Perfect. So this should basically show a screen that says Plateau Launchpad with a couple of use cases on marketing and so on. Let me just bring it back to a part of what Gino said. If you think about the big use case categories, the first big use case category is what Coke did, for instance, use the capability of the tech for generating new content. And that's where we'll go first. What we've done is we've mocked up the ability to generate an ad copy. We've done this for an insurance company. We could do it for any industry. In this case, we have the choice of trying to go for auto insurance, home, and other insurance. I'm actually going to select home insurance. Let's assume that we are trying to make a creative or customize a screen for a customer who's sort of getting established in the organization. I'm going to put some campaign themes. Given it's close to the weekend, I might actually go with something that's holiday themed. And I'm going to actually say, beach and sunshine. We can put any words in here. This is basically just to bring out the strength of the tech in sort of customizing things. When I hit generate content here, the tech is actually doing a couple of things. You remember Gino talked about DALL-E as a API. DALL-E basically generates images. So the first thing that it is doing is based on the theme and based on the sort of guardrails that this organization has established. It is going and picking up about 6 images. In this case, we've asked for it to generate 6 images. It's gone and picked up 6 images. The second thing that we are doing is then using GPT-4 to actually write the creatives. We've given it a specific format where we've said there's a major tagline, a sort of a smaller tagline and a lower tagline, along with the logo of the company. And this is a sort of construct of one ad creative. This is a live service, so it's actually using a live API. You'll have to bear with us for a couple of seconds. But what this is doing, like I said, is bringing this up from DALL-E to get the images in play. And as you're sort of seeing this, it's basically picked up images with sunshine and the beach, surfs up, worries down, get insured, soak up the sun, leave the worries behind. So none of this, if you notice, is something that we have said. It's basically written the taglines on its own. The images are all picked up by the software itself or generated by the software itself using DALL-E. Just pausing on, for example, the way you would think about using this. Obviously, one use case is the way, say, Coke used it, which was to generate interest in their brand. But you could think about this also as something that you can use for personalization. So, say, for instance, you have a set of customers that you are trying to personalize content for. It's always been a bit of a dream in analytics to get to a segment of one. Can I generate content for an individual customer based on his or her preferences? In a way, that's actually now possible with this technology. Personalization or hyper-personalization at scale is very much possible. You'll notice, like I said, the major tagline, the sort of minor tagline, and the lower tagline. All of these generated by GPT-4, the images generated by DALL-E. Let me just pause here, ask if there are any quick questions before I move to the next demo.
Any questions? I think, Mohan, if I can just add to what you were going to, what you've been talking about, we do a lot of work in the consumer goods and retail space. And, some of the conversations we have with clients at the moment around this is, I want to take my campaign below the line cost down to 0. Yeah. They can do it with this because they don't need an ad agency to develop copy. They don't need an ad agency to think about taglines, photo shoots, and they can do this, as Mohan said, they can do this hyper-personalized. So they can do this one-to-one. So if you think about, if you had data about, what your customers like, what their age group was, where they live, and if you input that into the text box, something very specific, something very relevant will come out. In an email or a messaging at no cost. Yes.
Just a question. Like, for example, if our marketing
please introduce yourself.
I'm Roger. I'm from Insular Life. So, what if, for example, our marketing subscribe to this one? How sure are we that in terms of copyright, we won't have any issues? Like, for example, those images, we won't get sued.
So probably Mohan is the best person to ask. I think there's a few questions around this line, so maybe I will just. One is IP, right? Like intellectual property. Another one is, am I allowed to use these data? Like, who owns these data to begin with? Can I get claimed for this as a fake, whatever? So are there ethical risks around it, and also the IP risk if I'm the creator? So Mohan, do you want to answer those questions?
No, sure. I mean, as you can imagine, this is a standard question that we come up with. What we have done in this case, for instance, is we've basically put a stock image library for this insurer, and we are generating images on top of the stock image library. So we are not going to the internet and picking up a general image or asking it to generate a general image. What we are doing is going to a stock image library that they already own and asking for a new image to be generated on the top of that. We think that an approach like this might actually give you a little more of copyright cover compared to going to the internet and asking for an image to be generated. But I think the broader point that you're raising is something that we should talk about for a minute. A key part of what we believe is going to be an important consideration in generative AI is also to make sure that you are designing the use case around the theme of responsible AI. So unlike in earlier considerations where or applications where you're actually building it without having to think as much through this, our recommendation is almost a construct that we call design for responsible AI. And we believe that you will almost have to overlay that on any use case that you're putting up. We have a standard framework that we bring to bear, where we talk about not just copyright issues, but there are other issues like, for example, hallucinations of the software that you should worry about. There are things like, for example, data bias, because this is using large data sets. So you need to have an approach to handle that. You need to have an approach for areas like, of course, copyright, but more importantly for generated content. What is your posture on that, and how you will actually use it going forward? So all of these are part of our consideration when we think about the design for responsible AI, and we strongly recommend, as you are getting into these applications, that you consider these implications and then build a capability rather than just go ahead and put something in place.
There was a question here.
There's a scene on the conference. Yeah.
One more thing.
In the back.
Let me pass on from CC. On the other side of
what's the probability that, let's say, me and this gentleman here, we're not from the same industry, by the way. What's the probability that both of us inputting the same things will get the same things, right? We all want to be unique. We all want to be to have the impact, right?
Yeah, it's a great question, and might require a little bit of a technical answer. So there are, for example, model level settings that we call temperature that can bring a little bit of variability to the output overall. So we think about trying to make sure that you get to a unique output as being composed of two considerations. One is, how do you make sure that you create a prompt? You should think of a prompt as something that today in ChatGPT you are typing in. Anything that you're typing in is becoming the prompt. But when you have an application like this, there is no typing in. The software generates the prompt. The prompt generation has a lot of considerations that you'll need to look through in order to make sure that you're getting a unique output. The other thing that you will need to do, obviously, is to make sure that technical settings like the temperature are varied basis the amount of variability that you want. In some cases, for example, customers come back and say that I want repeatability. When a customer asks me a question, I want to ensure that every time I have the same answer. I don't want different answers. But when you come to image, you might want to have slightly different images. So temperature settings and variability is something that's also part of the consideration. So I'll say it's a combination of prompt and variability that you can introduce to get to the right level of variety you need.
Mohan, maybe we go to the second use case.
Sure. Sounds good. So what I wanted to do was maybe go to a second model archetype, which is basically on human capability augmentation. So Gino talked about, for example, places where you can use this. Important place where this is getting used in multiple industries is actually as a productivity multiplier on human capability. For example, say an organization like Morgan Stanley is actually using this as a tool that they're extending to their wealth managers. And they believe that as a consequence, they might be able to increase the productivity of the wealth manager multifold. We're not talking about a 20-30% increase. We're talking about a 2 to 3 times increase. So in this case, what we've imagined is a journey for someone who's, let's say, sitting in a bank branch and selling insurance. What kind of tools and capabilities something like this can give him or her to make them more productive. So imagine I'm the RM, relationship manager. I'm sitting in a bank branch and I'm selling insurance. I've had a conversation with the customer Jane right now, and this has been a call that I've had with the customer. What I want to do is get to the place where I'm getting a quick summary of the call. So you remember we talked about the fact that you can actually use this Whisper API. The Whisper API converts text voice to text. In this case, that's what we've used. John and Jane are having a conversation. We've used that to sort of transcribe the conversation, and that's a set of things that they've talked about. What we've asked the software to do in parallel is basically pick up this transcript and give us a summary. We've asked it, to pick up a set of discussion points and action points, and that's what it's done. I mean, it's basically picked up that whole conversation and brought it down into a set of discussion points and action points. If you think about, a summary that you would otherwise have to make, this would have to be based on notes, take a lot of time, whereas something like this can actually happen quite quickly. And we can stack up the results, right? I can say, this is what happened as a summary of my previous meeting. This is what has happened as a summary of my current meeting. And by the way, the use case doesn't stop here. So I'm a new RM, and I actually want to use ChatGPT also as a capability to increase my training and to understand how effective I've been. So I can use the interface that we've built and ask a question and say, for instance, how did the call with Jane go? So I want to get an evaluation of how I did in the call. So what it will do is pick up the transcript and it will basically give me an evaluation. Sorry, I think the screen needs to be. Let's just give it a second. Might have timed out. So I'm asking the question again, how did the call with Jane go? And what it's doing is picking up the transcript, doing a sentiment analysis and trying to tell me how the call went. What it's doing is also comparing it with various other conversations that have been had with customers. To tell me, for instance, the call with Jane went well, this is what we discussed and this is what was the conclusion. I could ask the question, how can I improve the call with Jane? And again, it will give me inputs on what I can do to train myself better to get the right kind of inputs to make my conversation easier. Now, it says, for example, to improve the call, you can ask specific questions, blah, blah, blah. Think about this in an organization context where you have, let's say, front-end staff and maybe hundreds of them. To give them a tool like this, which can actually increase their productivity, give them how you can train them better. Also think about this in terms of, for example, their supervisor. So I'm an RM, I have a supervisor who has got a team of maybe 20 RMs reporting to him or her. He can or she can then use this to figure out how the team is doing and to look at where they need to intervene, where they need to think about training inputs and so on. We can also use this as a productivity tool to say, for instance, I want, let's say, cyber liability insurance is something that I've spoken about with the customer. I'm actually going to say, draft a letter. And what it will do is pick up the concept of cyber liability insurance from the product database and draft out a letter which is to context and not depending on the vagaries of whether the RM understands the space and so on. So you can sort of understand why an organization like Morgan Stanley is thinking about using something like this to increase the productivity of people and why it can be a huge productivity enhancer. Again, let me just pause here, ask if there are any quick questions before I move maybe to another quick demo, and then we can try and bring all of these pieces together.
Yes. Hi. Yes. I'm Patty. I literally work in insurance. What is this app called? What is this app called? Is it an app? Can I download it now?
No, this is an application that we've built, custom as a demo for a customer. This is not an app at this point in time, but I mean, if you want to build it as an app, that is possible. In fact, some of our customers are asking us to build it for them. We've not built a consumer-facing application as much as we are building capability for corporates. So this is being built as we speak for a couple of large corporates that we're working with.
So
the way you should think is you saw all the four sort of solutions or the elements that OpenAI offers that's around sort of ChatGPT,
the DALL-E. What we do with the clients are, now that we know the use case, for example, for an insurance company, that could be the how do we actually make sure that our sales agents are more effective, or if it's going to be with a retailer or a consumer product company, it will be around how do I make sure the marketing is becoming faster, more personalized, and cheaper. Then what we do together is we create that, based on that use case, we build the solution together with OpenAI and Bain. We also support the sort of the behind the scene IT architecture that needs to go around it. We will train the team together to do the scaling. So that's how it works right now.
Sorry, last question.
Yeah.
We're starting to use OpenAI, and I wanted to ask about security because our security guys are worried about that.
Probably Mohan is more appropriate.
For sure. What's the specific question on security that you want me to answer? Is there a specific question, or do you want me to just give you a general view on data security?
And OpenAI you're trying to use is the app that you installed, or is it already designed to your company in the sense that it's already storing the data in a secure place? Or is it more general one that is available in the market?
No,
Because
so what
OpenAI actually there's a lot of software that's free, right? So we're starting to explore different ways, and one of the things that our cybersecurity guys are worried about is like if you put like you're building stuff with all this software, is it secure? Is it going to like leak our data? Things like that.
Yeah, and I think that's basically exactly what I was referring to earlier when I talked about responsible AI by design. So taking a step back, I mean, there are a few things that are a reality about this generative AI. One is the fact that what you are doing is using an API that's available as a service. So if you think about what OpenAI is doing, they are basically making multiple APIs, which are services that are available. One of them for ChatGPT, one of them for DALL-E, and so on and so forth. So all that we are doing is using them in combination to get an application that you might need. Now, in order to do that, there are a couple of considerations that you need to think through related to data privacy. One of them is, what is the data that you need to use in order to train your instance of the OpenAI API? And usually what we recommend is that you store that information in your repository or vector databases, as we call it, within your organization. So a key consideration when we actually do the build for you that Yukiko was talking about is we actually come back and do the technical architecture where we say where your data will be stored. We don't want to send the data to OpenAI in general. What we want to do is to store the data within your instance. The only thing that will go from, sorry?
Maybe in a more simpler term for a non-tech like me. So my understanding, Mohan, please do correct me. When you give OpenAI a data or the prompt, right? That is already shared to them. It's visible to them. It's visible to everybody else as well. So that's the reality. So you do probably not want to share your customer data, any confidentiality data, to do any of these, because once you do that, it's actually public information. That's my understanding. And Mohan, do correct me if I'm wrong.
Not necessarily, Yukiko. I mean, what OpenAI says is that they will not use your information for training the models if you're using a corporate API. So the prompts that you use, that you send to OpenAI, they are not going to be used to train the model. Okay. If you're a consumer and if you're using ChatGPT, it will be used to train the model. But if you're a corporate, that information will not be used by them for training the model. So that's number one.
But you need to be recognized as a corporate customer, right?
Yeah, which means you'll need, which is part of what I was saying, that you will need to move to using a corporate API, and you will need to have your infrastructure considerations put together in order to be able to address this. But that's almost the starting point, right? You don't want to use a consumer API to interact with OpenAI. I think the second thing is also being aware of what is going in this prompt. This prompt that is going, a prompt is basically anything, like I said, that you're typing in ChatGPT. when you have an application, it's not typing it in, but you are creating it and you're sending it across. So you might want to be conscious about making sure you are not sending individual consumer information. So for example, PII, we scrub it and make sure that the applications actually scrub that information and send the API bereft of that, right? I mean, anything that goes to OpenAI is without that. The third consideration is you need to use some data to also customize the API for your organization. So the general API that comes in is basically an API that's available to everybody, but that doesn't have context of your organization. So you need to have something that trains it for your organization. And in order to do that, what we do is create a local data repository that actually enriches your prompt. That information then doesn't need to go to OpenAI every time. It can be enriched at your application level before it goes away. So I think these are the three things that we should think about in a corporate application that give you a certain amount of security. The only thing that happens is for audit purposes, not just OpenAI, Google Bard or any of them typically retain all the prompts for a period of time. In the case of OpenAI, they, for example, retain it for about 30 days. What you have to do is to make sure that those prompts don't contain any PII or any information that you think should not be available in the public domain about your consumers or your organization.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Okay. I think there's one more question.
Hi, I'm Miguel Garcia from ABI. We service a big sector of the industry we service is construction and enabling of the BPO industry, but just in a context, and we should all be concerned here. So I wanted to understand Bain's view on how AI is going to disrupt. Obviously, it's going to disrupt and enable a lot of industries, but from a Philippine perspective, yes, the BPO industry is 10% of our GNP, 10%. 1.7 million jobs present today, and another times 3 domino effect from construction, Jollibees, etc. So it's a big part of our economy, and it's a big concern how AI is going to affect the country. If you believe that the stock market is a leading indicator of how all major BPO stocks are now 30-40% down. So the market sees something. Just wanted to get the view of how you see Bain going to affect
Mohan, do you want to
BPO
go?
and
Have a
the Philippine industry.
No, sure. And to an extent, I think we've been asked this question. For example, in India, there's a large software industry, and again, to Gino, Yukiko's point, I mean, this can also be used for code generation. So there's a problem there across the region. Given that we have a services economy, we believe that there will obviously be some impact. Now, the way to think about this is, whether these organizations that are running these capabilities can actually absorb the tech and make themselves more efficient. If they do, then I think the fundamental rationale of the outsourcing remains, right? I mean, so say, for example, an ad agency today, if I were running an ad agency today, I'd be very worried because this can actually disrupt my business quite a lot. But there are two ways to address this. One is I could actually start using the tech myself, which is what we would recommend, for example, for the BPO industry, the KPO industry, to say that they should start thinking about absorbing some of these capabilities and using them within their organization. So if they become more efficient, the rationale for the outsourcing remains. They just move to a slightly different, higher level of productivity. So our stated view is the disruption is on us. I don't think we can walk away from that fact. It's a question of the time that it will take to get there. The more you are able to get to the place where you are absorbing some of these capabilities and you're able to use them, I think the better off you are, would be my my answer at this point in time. And by the way, it's a great question. And is a question that multiple people, multiple countries in this region who have a services-based economy are asking us.
Well, if I may add, so as Mohan said, the fundamental demand to outsource these type of services, whether that's back-end call center, may remain, I think. The challenge is the composition of what it takes to do that job will probably going to change a lot. It's going to be replaced by ChatGPT massively. it will gonna generate it, and therefore what's gonna likely to happen is there's two things that I do predict. One is that you as a BPO operator will probably going to be able to survive if you want to adapt to this quickly and be able to serve your customers with this new capability. And to do that, one is adaptation, but two is data, right? That what is the right response? What is the right way of treating customer? These are the things that you already know as a capability, and that needs to be stored in the data. If you have those data, and data is going to be the scale game. So the more data you have across different industry, probably you will be in a better position as a BPO operator to really survive and potentially gain share from the other BPO player who didn't adapt fast enough. So that's prediction one. Number two, for the Filipino who are currently working on the BPO, the easy question, the easy customer service is going to be going to ChatGPT. Your role is done on that one. So what you need to do is you need to now upskill. You need to be more able to sort of serve customer needs that is much more complex, right? But I think what's going to likely to happen, a lot of these complex customer services are actually still sitting in somewhere else, potentially in the headquarters that is actually outsourcing, right? These could actually now potentially come to Philippines. But for that to happen, the Filipinos needs to be able to upskill to do that. So that's my prediction. I think the demand to outsource will never going to go. I think it will continue because there is a benefit in economy of scale in this. The economy of scale is now shifting to data, so that's one. So you need to really make sure that you're data, and you need to adapt to technology, and then also you need to really upskill your employee or your frontline to deal with the complex stuff. So that's my prediction. If this does not happen, I think the BPO business in Philippines is going to be in very big danger.
Follow up, sir.
All good?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Ian from Shell. So, yeah, regarding the disruption about AI, of course. So we see that there is a need to retool the people's skills, let's say for BPOs. So we would have to retool, let's say, Shell's BPO from answering customers' query and all.
Yeah.
The question would be how much of an effort, resources in maintaining, let's say, good data, linking it to OpenAI, ChatGPT, how much effort would companies need to ensure that it would answer the way it should answer in terms of, let's say, how the company wants its people to answer customers?
Yeah. So maybe the other way to ask this is, in a typical term, and there's no maybe one standard, but in a typical term, if you were to replace what the customer service done by human beings, and then you're likely to replace it with ChatGPT type of solutions, how long would it take? Right? I think. Mohan, do you have an answer to this?
I mean, I think maybe the best way to answer this, Yukiko, will be to say how long we are taking to do a build for a customer. I mean, I think we are able to, today, for instance, build a medium complexity use case in sometime like about 4 months. So this includes the end-to-end, architecture. This includes the actual training of the models. This includes, the build of the application. I think it's worth pointing out that after this 4 months, you still have the task of getting your people to use this. So any transformation that might need to happen within the organization is not counted in this 4 months. But I would say a typical build of medium complexity will take about 4 months to get going. I would also say after that, you should account for maybe about two months or so for your organization to transform around this capability, if that makes sense. So I think that will be the easiest answer, Yukiko, that we might be able to give.
Yes.
But I think there's a little bit of it depends.
I'm just imagining how fast we should be, moving if we're going to use it, and then retooling our people.
Yes.
Just making sure that, of course, we don't want to have
Yes,
massive
yes,
layoff, but
yes.
rather retooling their skills.
Yes, yes. I think that retooling your employee will take much, much longer than actually creating a ChatGPT type solution that you need. But that needs to go in parallel, I think, as well.
Just conscious of time, we maybe had a couple more slides as we wanted to go through, and then I think we just wanted to leave time at the end for final few questions.
Yep. Okay.
So can you just put the slides back up?
Next slide.
Next.
One more.
Okay, there. Yeah.
So quickly, so the solutions and demos you have seen was already sort of built in, but when you think about what other companies are now doing with these generative AI technologies, we see it in these six main areas. We recently did a survey asking 600 companies who are across different 11 industries who are already using generative AI, and asked them like, what kind of things are you using it for? And these are pretty much where they're using it on. And by the way, they're using it, most of them are using it on 2 areas at the same time already. Where very common is marketing, which is not a surprise. 40% of our survey also confirmed that. So 40% of the people who surveyed said we're doing it in marketing, whether we're generating content or generating tagline, that stuff. We are also seeing massive transformation in customer service as well. So this is around the BPOs. Again, a lot of the things are now doing in how do I make my agent more smarter, whether that is on BPO side or on the sales assistant side. So that's also happening. Customer loyalty is another one. And then a lot of sort of the bottom 3 is the sort of the back end of the operation. So customer insight analytics, this is probably not a surprise. Operations, so this is around sort of automation, like how can I make sure some of the process are now fully automated and will be gone. And then new product and services. So there are 2 elements. One is how do you use generative AI to actually design new product, design new service, and then also how do you integrate OpenAI or generative AI to your current services and new product. Surprisingly, in the survey, 35% of the companies are already saying that they're integrating it to their service today. That is how fast things are moving for the people who are already using this technology. So I'm not going to cover all of this. We as Bain cover multiple industries, and we have a sort of where are your typical use cases are from your end-to-end value chain. We're happy to talk about this more on a different occasions. So if you do have more deep questions on case, please do come to us. In the next slide. So where do you want to start? Where do we typically see our clients start? There are 3 sort of steps. One is let's start from understanding where your use cases are. I had a sort of few chat with some of the people who came into the room earlier, and they're in the various places. Some people already, I actually know where my use cases is, and we're just exploring. I think it's a good idea to find out where the use case are. Like how can you potentially use this technology first? Once the use case is clear, and when you prioritize your use case in the sense of which one actually has the biggest business impact and customer experience impact, then you can say, how can we scale, right? So we will do a pilot, but then you need to scale. So that's another. And then third one is how do I then build the capability in my organization? Because now they need to run with this new technology and keep on adapting and using it in a different functions. So how do I actually build that capability? So these are the 3 steps that usually our clients go now, or most of them are on the journey. And the first place is probably to start from the use case and marrying it with your potential roadmap that you have today. That's it. So I think I hope this was interesting, maybe a bit scary, in the sense that how fast
things are moving, and I don't want to scare you even more, but we have a very strong conviction that today is your slowest day, right? The things will just gonna get faster and faster, and now what we are seeing is there are people who are now picking it up and running with this already. So I do encourage you to at least consider where the use is are, and if those use case makes a business sense, probably good to also pick up and start thinking about running, or if not running. So thank you so much for coming. Mohan, thank you so much for joining from Singapore. You know you want to have
Thank
some
you.
work. Any question?
Are there a couple more questions? Actually, what we're going to do is we can take a couple of questions now. We'll close. There's a little bit of food, and they're here, and you can pester them there. But if you have any question now, Bobby.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Bobby Castillo. I am a recently retired executive chief carpenter. It's not really a question, it's a request that guys like me who want to, I waited 17 years to retire my secretary, and I know I can live with an artificial intelligent and more intelligent support for people who are already superannuated and tend to forget things in the way we run our lives. But at this point in my life, I cannot afford to hire a Bain company to teach me how to teach my machine to talk to me every day about what I'm supposed to do and the things that I might want to discuss with it, not her or him, on how to design things so that life will be better for human beings. I just wish that you would come up with something more democratized, that you don't have to get a big-time client to make you big fees, but really to have an app that you're looking for that can be bought for a few dollars, but you have the whole world as your customer, and you can really make a big retirement pay from your stock options. So this is something that I wish you would think about, and think about guys like me who have simple days now that I am retired, that I used to be able to afford to hire guys like you to teach our machines how to do things better. But that's about the thing that the other thing is really it was not really a pun, that I actually waited for myself to retire before I retired my secretary, because I knew her life. I knew her children were in school, and I didn't have the heart to retire her, because I could have hired a machine to do what she does for me, but she did for me. But since these are things that you develop, particularly Mohan and the guys out there who think about big things, to try to put some ethics and to put some heart into this. I used to call these contraptions, but they're more sophisticated now. They're generative, and the danger. It's important that you also raise the fears of people about AI, is because we know of bad guys, and bad guys don't really have a sense of what's good or bad. They just take advantage of things. Unfortunately, that was the way economics was taught to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bobby. I think we all know that the ethics is a big discussion right now around the world. Mohan has touched it. Gino, do you want to touch it a bit?
Yeah, I think we're at the beginning of this journey. I think we've seen the not so good. We've seen some of the not so good examples and manifestations of what could be. I think Mohan talked about this earlier. We want to take a responsible approach, and data is obviously one of the key components of this whole ecosystem, and we want to, and we're thinking with clients and with OpenAI about how can we take this journey very responsibly and ethically. But it's early days, and we're going to learn. There are going to be missteps along the way. And I think that's part of this journey. It's both exciting, but it's both terrifying at the same time.
One last question.
Yeah, my name is Martin Camara. I'm in the healthcare industry, and I was just curious, coming from where we're coming from with a pandemic and everything, if the technology is able to capture the dissenting opinions. Because let's say what happened with healthcare, there was no recognition of natural immunity, and it's sort of the narrative pointed to just one way of addressing the pandemic with an experimental technology. So given that everything is available online and it looks at what the press is doing, and of course we do realize that a lot of our regulators are actually funded by the pharmaceutical industry, and a latest study was like 86% minimum. My concern is, as humanity, I guess, and talking about ethics, is that is AI able to capture the dissenting voices that are very scientific, that have actually been published, but are not being propagated because the powers that be that drive economics are not supporting it? So it's a question.
Mohan, did you want to give your
Yeah,
thoughts to that?
I think the easiest way to answer this is maybe coming to the broader question of AI ethics, right? I mean, I've been working on the area of AI ethics for the last maybe something like about 10, 12 years. And I'll say that we just got to the place where we had done a lot of work and had codified work on AI ethics for traditional AI. And suddenly now we have generative AI, which is opening up completely new fronts, and it's sort of opening up, maybe to Gino's point, a completely different kind of capability set that we need to think through. Bain's actually thinking about it, as are a lot of other organizations globally. I'll maybe leave a couple of thoughts with you. One is, I think the way to think about this is, everybody owns the responsibility for ethical AI. I mean, it's not just OpenAI or a Bain or a corporate. I think one of the things that we encourage is when you are actually going ahead with a project, that you also think about the responsible AI by design. So by doing that, you hopefully address some of the issues right up front. So for example, if you're heading into a place where you might have a certain amount of people redundancy, perhaps to Yukiko's point, you can think about this more as redeployment of people and actively manage that situation rather than think of redundancy. So I think thinking about this right up front is going to be important, and all the more important in the current context. Now, back to the question very specifically on whether the software can capture dissenting voices. Yes, it can. I mean, does it have the capability? Yes, it does. Who will deploy the capability, I think, is a question we have to ask ourselves, right? I mean, that's the real question here, on how you will capture the dissenting voices, like you said, and make sure those are heard as well. And that's where I think I'll draw the step back and say it's more about trying at a corporate and an individual level to think about the best way to employ this tech in a construct that is responsible. And responsible is a word that we think is broader than just ethical, because it's not just about an ethical usage, but also about implications coming from the use of the tech and how you manage around it, if that makes sense.
Mohan, thank you very much. And Gino, Yuki, thanks so much. Please join me in thanking Gino, Yuki, and Mohan for today's presentation. I think it's very interesting that while we started with all the technology and the applications, that it really ended with the concerns, whether it's concerns about industries and jobs, or about democratization and how, if this is going to be accessible to everybody, and also, I guess, at the flip side of democratization, if it'll be able to capture all opinions, or it becomes one monolithic tone. Like Gino said, early days. We expect to have more of these kinds of discussions going forward. We'll close today's discussion now, but like I said, Gino and Yuki are here for a few more minutes. Please don't hesitate to approach them with your individual questions, and we look forward to hearing from you and seeing you again. With that, happy weekend to everybody, and thanks for coming, and have a good day. Thanks.